It was dark that night. It's a kind of dark that keeps your head reverting behind you with fear that someone is watching. Shannon was awake, though, almost too awake, and out of place to be walking the streets past midnight. She didn't care much. After being up for 2 days, she had this feeling of invincibility overcome her. Shannon was a junkie. She likes to refer to herself as a clean junkie. No needles or any of that blood stuff. No, Shannon liked uppers. She wanted to wake up and stay up. She attempted to match her footsteps to the racing beat of her heart, but she ended up in a slight jog. The cops were out, and the last thing she wanted was to end up in detox. She knew she didn't have to be on the streets that night, but her husband was getting suspicious of her sleep schedule as of late. She walked, she glared at the changing street lights, green to yellow and yellow to red. With each light she stared as tracers followed behind it, almost like a fluorescent tail behind the source. She felt the numb tingle in her hands and feet. It felt even though she knew she would have to stop eventually. Shannon approached the bridge that crossed over a small river. The water was black, reflecting the wavy streetlights from above. It was beautiful. She wanted to cry, but her brain was functioning too quickly to stay in the moment. She turned and continued to walk across the bridge. Small, dull hum filled her ears. She didn't know this sensation. It felt like a minor annoyance, but she shrugged it off, assuming it was the amphetamines. Was headed towards the Stellar Comet Cabaret, her favorite all-night club. Drake would be there. She promised herself to take a Breel after this bender, but maybe he will let her have a little sample if she does him a favor. Standing in front of the marquee lights, Shannon's heart was exploding. She was peaking hard. The beautiful letters spelled out her favorite club's name. The neon danced in the sky like her own personal light show. She had barely noticed the bouncer calling her by name, until that low hum resonated inside her head again. Shannon, he shouted, and she quickly bounced back to reality. She thumbed through her purse, rummaging for her driver's license, and he just waved her inside. Unmotivated to deal with her sporadic behavior, "Go in. Your man Drake is in the VIP section," her hurriedly hissed at her. The bouncing music and flashing lights sparked a feeling of euphoria inside her. She floated around the bar, flashing her eyes at everyone that would have them. Walking past the bar, she glanced at the glass bottles and winced. The thought of a drink while she's on amphetamines sounded horrific. A familiar voice rang throughout the main floor. "Shan, get your ass over here, I got you something special." It was Frank. She looked in the direction of the disembodied voice and connected it with its creator. Frank was a normal uptown scumbag. He pushed dope for someone who pushed someone else's dope, who bought it from someone who was told to push it for someone else. Low-level junkie turned hometown hero dope peddler, and he was a huge fan of Shannon. "How's my favorite girl?" Frank said to Shannon, almost menacingly. His demeanor was obtruse. She shrugged her left shoulder and looked at her feet. Oshana knew Frank too well. On many personal levels, he had an up on her, one that could lead to a divorce. She was still a junkie after all. "Good," she replied, softly, like a child would to a strange adult. Frank leaned back and patted his cheap khaki pants and gestured her to come towards him. She knew the trick. It'd sit in his lap and score some dope. Nothing more, nothing less. This was a cheap club for tricks, but it was a finey establishment than a brothel. She was safe here, for the most part. Shannon had begun grinding on his lap, facing the opposite way in hopes to avoid his disgusting grimace. He had a weird face he made when he was turned on. She was high and uncomfortable, wanting this to end, to get her score and retreat to the blank streets outside. He grabbed her hips as she slowly thrust from side to side, front to back. She jumped. His grip was firm and rough. As she turned to tell him off, their eyes met, and the dull hum was back. It sent a shock through the front of her head down her spinal column, vibrating every vertebrae as it shimmied down her nervous system. She sprang up and started to tremble. "Look at her," Frank laughingly announces. "The bitch needs a fix." The small gathering of people around Frank began to laugh mockingly. Their faces turned her stomach, pompous no-lifes who had a night out on the town. They must have felt so good hanging out with a loser like Frank, she thought. Frank loudly uttered at her, tossing a poorly wrapped bag of meth. "You're dumb hoe, take your little fix and beat it. This place isn't too fond of tweaking skanks." It felt good to be back outside. The cold wind from the river crept up to greet her skin. She shivered and felt in her purse for her pipe, as she crossed the street back to the bridge, ignoring the bouncer. She sat on the bridge, feet dangling over the calm river, and began to load her pipe with Frank's generous gift. Light was still dancing from the water, moving in a hypnotic trance up and down and side to side, a motion she was too familiar of. She took a hit of her pipe and exhaled, face toward the moon, and then it happened. All of a sudden, her ears began to ring. The hum was there, but less pronounced. She felt a sharp sting, like a blade in her ear canal digging, no, scraping. It was horrible. She wanted to scream, but as she inhaled, the drugs hit. She felt an immediate rush to the brain. This was not the meth working. This was something else, something different. She shot up off the side of the bridge and kicked off her shoes. Her eyes twitched from side to side. Her skin felt disconnected from her body. She could no longer distinguish person from mind. She no longer felt the hum, but heard it. Above, her large septum tilted upwards, along with her dangling earrings and stainless steel chain-link necklace. She grabbed at her face in complete overstimulation and felt the pull of gravity as it reversed. The septum gave in to the struggle, and almost in unison, it and the earrings were ripped from her cartilage. She screamed in agony and looked up towards her now levitating jewelry. There was an object above her, dark in the night sky. Its massive black body vibrated and began to get smaller. It was going higher. The tension in her spine was riveting. She felt her legs fill with immense weight. Both legs simultaneously snapped at the shin pointing upwards. She was screaming at the top of her lungs, but no noise was made. She noticed she was not on the ground but hovering above the bridge some 30 feet. Her arms were being eeled upward, parallel to her legs. As she stared vertically in the air, she felt the cold drip of blood running from the cleanly cut bones of her legs. As it leaked from the wound and dripped upwards towards the sky, the blood passed her eyes and lifted from her hair toward the massive object in the air. She wanted to scream, to plea for release, but there was no sound. Shannon was in a vacuum. She gasped for air, like a fish out of water. The tears she shed were moving up the skin of her face and mixing in with the trails of blood from her legs as it was pulled into the sky. She felt the pop of her lungs collapsing under the pressure, and her bones began to turn inward as she struggled. Loud whoosh sounded in the air, though due to the vacuum she couldn't hear it. But she felt it.
Cut.
The pressure subsided almost immediately, and she fell from her state of levitation to the ground and connected with the hard concrete of the bridge. Her body lay there, broken and battered. Lungs collapsed and bones bent in unrecognizable uniform. She could move anything but her eyes as she watched the object slowly disappear into the night sky.